Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Population First podcast. As the world marks the International Day of the Girl Child, we turn our attention to this year's UN theme: The Girl I Am, the Change I Lead, Girls on the Front Lines of Crises. This powerful theme celebrates girls who are leading change in the face of crises, from climate disruption and conflict to inequality and digital exclusion. It reminds us that the stories of girls' resilience and leadership must not only be told, but truly centered, that they must be seen, heard, and celebrated as change makers shaping the world around them. The media, after all, has a profound responsibility here. As journalists and storytellers, we know how narratives shape both perception and policy. To explore this vital intersection between gender, leadership, and media, we are joined by two extraordinary women whose voices continue to shape public thought. Ms. Ranjona Banerjee, senior journalist and columnist with over 3 decades in print, broadcast, and digital media, has held editorial positions with the Times of India, Midday, DNA, and the Asian Age. She is widely respected for her incisive commentary on media ethics, politics, and gender, and for her unwavering advocacy of media accountability and sensitivity. And Ms. Manjiri Gokhale Joshi is a mentoring coordinator at the Radcliffe Department of Medicine, University of Oxford, founder of Maya Care Foundation, and co-founder of Elephant Connect Education. This evening scholar, author, and social entrepreneur brings together years of experience in leadership, inclusion, and communication, which is grounded in her early years in journalism. Together, we will reflect on what it means for the media to move beyond portraying girls as victims of circumstance and instead to recognize them as powerful agents of change. Over to our experts.
So Ranjana, over your decades of journalism, you must have seen, I think, at least two or three generations of women across strata evolving, changing their outlook towards what it is, what it means to be a girl child, and what it means today. So, if you'd just like to touch upon that when we start.
Yeah, so when we started working, say in the 80s is when I started in the mid 80s, and it was a very vibrant, exciting time as far as we were concerned because there were a lot of women in the media, and you felt, that even though we didn't use all the terms of glass ceilings and things which came later, but we felt that we had a space and a presence. And I think I sort of lived in that fantasy for a while. What really was an eye opener to me was the Me Too movement, which, in fact, in a sort of a strange negative way, because suddenly I found from older feminists of my generation, maybe one below and certainly above, a sort of resistance to younger women objecting to the patriarchal gaze or objecting to certain patterns of behavior. And I was quite shaken by that because I thought, if we have fought to get a certain, if I won't say equality, forget that, some amount of fairness, and then these older women of my generation seem to resent younger women demanding those rights. And even with, say, the MJ Akbar case, this whole thing of the older feminists supporting him and saying, oh, what's the big deal, maybe he just felt you up, or and that sort of attitude across in the media, in academia. And to me, that sort of, it underlined the thing which made me, I'm quite cynical as a person, but even more cynical that those shackles of patriarchy, are really so high bound to us. To break out is difficult, is really difficult. So when there are, I mean, I'm always grateful to Laadli for pushing the gender sort of discussion further, but I'm always watching out to see how many other elements are trying to enter what to me is very much a woman's space, and I think it creates a bit of tension in today's inclusive world, because I'm never quite sure what inclusive means. Is it inclusive of me, or am I supposed to be inclusive of anybody else because I'm a kind, sweet woman? It's a yeah, that's where I stand on this. I'd be interested to see how you have, seen your years as a woman in the media and in your sort of social sector and beyond.
Right. That's really interesting, a very interesting perspective, Ranjana. I'll talk about women to start with the two Indias we live in. The two Indias we live in have just never been able to bridge the gap between the two Indias that we have. Even today, it's unbelievable that in 2025, we are talking about a girl child's right to be born. It's just incredible that that still is a debate.
Yes,
Just yesterday, we
yes,
were looking at a movie called Chori, and it's just shocking that how that can still exist. Not just in rural parts of India, but urban parts of India, that even today, it has to be legally banned. Knowing the gender of an unborn baby is legally banned in our country, and people across, especially the Western world, just can't understand why that should be the case. So that's the first point. That even today we have that issue of a girl child's right to be born after everything that women have achieved. That's the first one. The second, I work with very, very positive cohorts of people, three positive cohorts of women. And the first is women who are the first graduates in the family, the first woman ever in the family, maybe sometimes in the whole
yes,
village, or the whole community, the whole slum, to go to university. And I have been doing that through a program called the Corporate Sanskar. We named it Corporate Sanskar. And we work with the Malhotra Wakefield Foundation since the past 10 years through our company Elephant Connect. And it's extremely heartening to see September after September, there's an annual event every September, to see girls from these, a lot of them are from farming families across Maharashtra, and they come in, and there have been so many occasions where the parent would say, we have chosen to have just one daughter, we've chosen to have just one child so that we can concentrate and give her our best. And these are girls who've gone on to do their MSc and their PhDs, and they are somewhere else.
yes,
So
yes,
that's the first. Even there, what where the problem really is, when they're of what is called marriageable age in our country, and when they're of marriageable age, and then there are the restrictions from the in-laws saying, should this girl who is now a gold medalist and is doing so well, should she be working at all, and if she's working at all, should she be relocating, and all those issues. But still, we are at a stage where it's a very positive story. That's the first one. The second cohort of women I work with, who I'm extremely proud of, is through our charity, Maya Care Foundation. And, I'm very, very proud to tell you that 70 to 80% of our workforce in Maya Care are women. They're all of those women who, through our project Bindu, they are either on wheelchairs or they are blind, but they're all independent. And when they come in, they've never worked before. They came into the system not knowing what it is to work, or not being given the opportunity to work. And today they're supporting their own families from their own wheelchairs. So that's the second cohort of women. And there is, of course, as we go along, I'd love to have more questions about those case studies. But that's the second. And again, where that comes into the picture is that, oh, this girl is already problem number one, she's a girl. Problem number two, she's on a wheelchair. Problem number three, she's not married. So how is it going to work in the long run, right? But again, there is a story of hope there. And the third cohort of women I work with are women leaders, emerging leaders as well as accomplished leaders. And I'll go back to an older story where I used to be a CEO of a company called Global Talent Track, GTT. And once again, very proud to tell you that in my leadership team of 13, there were 10 women. And I used to get asked, what are you feeding them? What's different? What is happening here? When everyone else is grappling with the number of women. And my answer was that all we need to do is support women at different stages of their career, at different stages of life, and everyone needs something else. Right? It might be a single person. It can be a single mom. It can be somebody who has a couple of children but is grappling with her own career, partner's career, whatever is, or might be dealing with elderly parents, whatever they're dealing with. Can we just support them? We're not asking them to work less, be any less efficient, or be any less effective, but
yeah,
just be supportive. And it's really as simple as that. And where the women's movement is concerned, and I worked it in EDI. My last role was as EDI head, Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion head at Side Business School, University of Oxford, till 6 months ago. And every time that the word EDI came up, it was about women. And I say EDI in women, it's a very old story. I don't think we need that. We don't need it in the time we are living in today, in the urban world, in the westernized world we are living in. Because all you need to do is let a woman have a choice. Like everyone else has a choice, a woman has, I mean, as long as she has the choice, she'll do what she has to do. She does not need anything special. And this is the straight of women we are talking about, because we should stop, inclusion should be, more about, of course, disability, LGBTQ, trans, or whatever else. That there is so much more to inclusion, of course, caste, religion, all of that. But it's not about women alone, and we should stop. Those days are gone, unless we're still talking about the women, where we're talking about, very, very small communities where the girl's child's right to be born, etc. That's a different kind of world we're living in. But this woman, this world where everything should be equal, it is equal. We should stop the gender debate. That's what I feel.
No, that's very, inspiring to listen to. And I mean, it's wonderful, especially women who come from social backgrounds where this sort of societal norms are far more constricting. But of course, I think, which, as you mentioned in the beginning, the fact is we are a society where women have to fight to be born, and as much in well-off, middle-class, urban areas as it is in areas which we expect to be backward. But backward thinking is not necessarily determined either by money or by geography. So it can and does exist everywhere. I think the biggest takeaway for me is the idea of choice, because for me that is paramount. You can The fact that you have a right to choose without society telling you what it is you should or must or not choose is something which somehow we haven't managed to explain to ourselves as much as to anybody else. That we do have, yes, there are duties and responsibilities, we all understand that. To be free to choose doesn't necessarily mean you want to sort of jump into a mini skirt and smoke 6 packs of cigarettes a day. It is not, that's not what we mean by choice, though you are free to choose to do that as much as you like. But there's also this thing of I don't work formally with any social sector, but I'm involved in sort of a lot of environmental and NGOs, because mainly because of where I live, which is in Dehradun, which is pretty fragile as far as the environment is concerned now. And you have a lot of younger women at the forefront. But it's very, one thing is, I don't want to make stereotypes, but it is North India. So let's say, we had a little protest talking about the rape and assault of Manipuri women, which happened when the unrest started over there. And at sort of a little gathering of people, it was the men who wanted to talk the most. Somehow they had the most to say, until somebody sort of pushed the younger women forward to put forward what they went through. So this whole idea of, this, the fact that no matter what, it's a man's world, they will tell you how bad it is, that women are ill treated. But for the woman to put forward her perspective, so I was very happy to see younger women stepping out and just saying, leave us alone. Don't question me when I leave the house. Don't ask me what I'm wearing. Don't do that. Take a look at yourself and try and fix yourself with that.
Right.
And the other side of it is, which is why I wanted to discuss with you, especially in the social sector. If you look at the sort of anger and hatred that's been projected towards Greta Thunberg right now with this flotilla, it's remarkable to see middle-aged and even young men attacking this young woman. For what? you know how how have you sort of in your work dealt with this sort of male gaze or appropriation or attack which women at the forefront have to face?
Ranjana, it's a very, very interesting question, because I think nobody has asked me this question in public before, and it could be a first one, really, to be able to answer this one. And I before I've been married now, second time for the past 16 years, but before that I was a single mom for several years, and through that, that single mom period, and then later, it was a very painful thing to face. One of the very, very painful things to face was the judgment. the judgment that why are you successful? Why are you professionally successful? Why are you doing well? Why do you look happy? And why are you in a good place? And the expectation is that if you are single and if you're also mom, there should be something wrong with your life. There should be visibly something wrong, and
Yeah.
something is wrong. Something very much was wrong with my life. I will admit it was not happy. It was not a happy place to be in. But as a single mother, I thought it was very important for me to project to my daughter that in the given circumstance, we are going to make the most of what there is and do our very best. And we had, of course, a very, very supportive family, my parents, my brother, everyone. It was extremely, a whole group of lovely friends. But of course, there was something missing. And of course, there was something not happy. But that does not mean that day in and day out, you project that unhappiness and stop doing well. If anything, that meant, and that's the
Yeah.
role model I tried to set for my daughter, is that it means that you do your best in your career, give it your best shot, and that's what she's doing today. Why am I bringing this up? Because right through those years, somehow I never got any criticism on my the competitive nature of my job, or I got no criticism on competence really, or how well I was doing my job. The only kind of criticism I might have got otherwise is about my happiness quotient, or how I am good at networking, so that's a bad thing, or how I have so many friends, so that's not a good thing, or how I am generally, with a lot of
Okay.
people, and it's not a good thing, and definitely not a good thing to have an equal share of male and female friends, because having male friends who are not a partner,
Yeah.
are not a brother, or not someone, is not a good thing at all because that means you're definitely doing something wrong. And I think that is where this is coming from, because when someone, and now today at the age of 51, where I am, I can say this openly, which I couldn't in my 20s and 30s. I could not say it. I said, if we had the time to really get into so many romantic relationships over the years. I mean, I've had 44 bosses in my life. And if that was what I was doing, when do you think I had any time to work or be a mom? Really, I can say this openly, and I say this with a lot of spirit now. But I couldn't that time, because the only method that was projected, and very, very surreptitiously, it was never done directly. Nobody has ever said this to me directly. But, oh, you must be doing well because of something else. And that is so wrong, because when you are
Yeah.
praising
Yeah.
a woman, a young girl, or even an older woman for her competence, for the work she's doing, and because you can't find anything wrong with the work or the competence, or the effectiveness of what you're doing, the only thing you're going to say is something else which is not even true. And even if it was true, let's for a moment assume it was true, it is nobody else's business. And how come we're all right? How come we're absolutely all right with the number of stories with our male leaders and everything else, but we're not all right with the stories about our female leaders or female film stars
Yeah.
or female anyone? And I repeat, it is
Yeah.
nobody else's business, and that's where it should stop. She's a young girl still. All the best to her. She's doing a phenomenal job of where she is, but it's not going to go away, because when there is nothing else to
Yeah.
attack, I think it's a good sign. Today, if a young girl asks me at 20s, I'll say it's a good sign. That means you're doing really well. So, because there's nothing wrong with your professional life. Somebody else has found something to attack you with,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
way beyond, and, it won't stick. Or even if it does, it's really their problem in the long run.
While we are now increasingly wanting gender sensitivity of our journalists, when we look within the newsrooms, while we do see within the newsroom a large presence of women, the glass cabins still happen to be peopled by men largely. So when you look at the cabins, then in the cabins we very often find more men than women, but outside in the newsroom we see more women. So maybe you could speak a little about that also, because both of you have been part of newsrooms and can speak about it.
Yes, even though I have to say there are certain organizations in which I work where women have been the editor, and not just with women's magazines, let's say with editions of the Times of India and the Indian Express and others, there have been women in very serious positions of power. So I came across a very interesting term which I didn't know, which was the glass cliff, which is when you have a difficult situation in an office, or an organization, you hand that problem to a woman, knowing that the problem is so impossible that she is more likely going to fall off in trying to repair things. When she reaches the stage where it's almost fixed and she falls off, in steps a man to take the credit for having done everything, and then going back to his glass cabin and looking out proudly. Now, this is something which I think as women we need to be aware of, and say, I'm not going to do your dirty work for you. You want that office cleaned up, put one of your favorite little boys on the job, and don't come to me. That's what we need to have the courage to say, rather than to see it as a form of glory. Oh, well, I won't get any money for it. I won't get a designation for it. I won't get a reward. My reward will be in doing the job well. That is what we are programmed as women to do, to please our families, please society around us, not to be confrontational. And as Manjiri said, otherwise, of course, we slept our way to the top, in which case we never did any work at all. We were just lying on our backs and we somehow rose up in that manner. So I think that's a lesson for us. I've just used one example, but a lesson for us not to get taken in by false praise, which doesn't come with some packet attached to it, which is, I think, what men are a little cleverer at, because they're trained from childhood to be a little more go-getting, and that's seen as a sign, of course, as we know, these are cliches, that's a sign of them being dynamic, whereas it's a sign of me being aggressive, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to be a little more self-aware, aware of what is being done to us, so we don't feel ashamed when they say we are hard and bold and evil and cruel and all that. And just we can laugh and be evil and cruel and funny and make a few jokes, but stick to our guns is the only advice I can offer, because it's a long time since I was in a newsroom, and my understanding has got even worse than it was when I was there. So yeah, all I have to say is best of luck, but don't give in, don't get taken in by how things
Thanks.
are presented to you.
Excellent, excellent, Ranjana. I haven't been in a newsroom for, I think, over two decades, because I quit journalism in the late 90s, is where I quit. Early 2000. But I'll talk about women leaders and women bosses in general, and male bosses as well. And like I described recently, when I had 10 out of 13, I had 10 women. I mean, that's a win. That was a big win, and that was now in 2017. But if you go back to when I was heading up what was called Zensar, the contact center at Zensar Technologies many years ago, this was way back in 2007. I had a full team of men only. I had no women in my leadership team. Of course, it was a big team of 400 people. So, like we rightly said right now, there were enough women on what was called the floor. There were enough contact center agents. There were quality women and women in training, but there were no women leaders. All my entire team was men only, and just men and me suddenly. So it was a different equation. It was different. But I would be a little, I would say, on the egalitarian front, because I've had equal number of men and women reportees. I've had more male bosses definitely than female bosses, because that's the way the statistic is. But right through, I would like to go to two reasons why this could happen. And the first one is nothing to do with women's competence or even the men's desire or ability to promote them, but it is to do with our social scenario. When I say our, it is not just the Indian scenario. In fact, if anything, it's much worse in the Western world,
Yes.
and much worse in the Western world simply because of the cost of childcare. That's all there is to it. There is a single reason why women don't rise to the top in the Western world is because of the cost of childcare. And I'll just explain that a little bit. Way back when I was a journalist at DataQuest in 2003. In 2003 at DataQuest, we'd done a survey, and I had led that survey among employers, best employers, asking women in IT, and looking at women in IT and the progression of women in IT. And exactly what we said about the newsroom was true of women in IT as well. And it is true about women across industries, that now our engineering colleges, our medical colleges sometimes have 50%, our MBA colleges have 50% women or even higher. So they're all there. They're bright. Everything is going so well. You take 5 years into the industry and it's dropped. You take 10 years into the industry, it's dropped further. And you take this C suite and there are no women. And there might be a token woman on the board. So what's happening? What's happening there? What happened 20 years ago is still happening today. It has nothing to do with the competence of women.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
to do with the social scenario which says as soon as you finish your MBA, let's get you a nice boy. And that nice boy could be in a different location. The nice boy could be, in the army or, going to a place where there is no job for you or somewhere else. So you have to relocate. And if you are going to relocate, then nothing is, you really have to fight it out if it is going to be your career and you have to look for a new job and you have to do what you have to do in that new location. If it doesn't work, you're very gently and socially told to adjust. Right? That's
Yes.
that's the key word. Adjust. Thoda adjustment kar lo. Just be ambitious, but don't be that ambitious. Or be ambitious till the time you're mom, or you're a nice wife and a nice daughter-in-law and nice whatever else. But that's it. Do not be overtly ambitious, and definitely do not expect anyone to relocate for you. So that's problem number one, 5 years down the line. Problem number two, 10 years down the line. By then, she has two children. 15 years down the line, she's had enough of trying to commute and trying to have this networking evening, which is really not working because there are so many expectations. And even worse, by then, there are two incomes, and the incomes are good enough, so the income is not needed. So because the income is not needed, suddenly the career is not that important, which it was very important in the beginning. So this is to do with the social scenario. It has nothing at all, I'm repeating, to do with anyone's competence or even there is nothing wrong with the corporate world either. I don't think there is definitely nothing wrong with our policies because we are at par with the world when it comes to policies. But this is the social scenario. It's going to change last, if at all, because there's this whole setup about the marriage institution and biological clock and everything else, all the pressures which are right there, IVF and all of that, which is now exploding. So that's the first part. The second one is actually very interesting. It is to do with one of my books, which is called Bosses of the Wild, which is about animal behavior and personalities. And in that, you have the lion and lioness personalities. And people often ask me that are all lioness personalities women and are all lion personalities men? And actually, that's not true. That is really not true. And I won't go deeper into the book, but all I'm saying is they're very good leaders. Both of them, both these personalities are very, very good leaders. And you find a lot of lion and lioness personalities among leaders across industries. And the only difference between the lioness and the lion personality is the lack of the mane. Right? Everything else, the competence, the muscle power, the ability to nurture younger people, to take them forward, to lead, everything is great. But there is no mane. And there is no purpose of the mane. The only purpose of the mane is to impress the lioness. There is no other purpose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
given the fact that, there is no other purpose of this mane, I've likened the mane to the male ego, to the ego in general, of saying, here I am, and I'm this persona, I'm this attractive, larger than life persona. So come and respect me. Not just come and respect me, but I'm going to roar, and this is my domain. And that is something a lot of women leaders, I think, don't even care about. Not just are they not good at, because if they wanted to, they can, put on a persona and they can do it. But they actually don't care a lot of times. Like you rightly said, Ranjana, they just do their job. They're doing what needs to be done, clean up the scenario and, be efficient about it and move forward. So when I look back, I feel that it's okay. I mean, it's not important to me either as a leader. It really is not important to me because all it is an ego, right? And it's all right.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine to not be in a cabin. To answer the question, whether do you need to really sit in a cabin to be a leader? No, you actually don't need to sit anywhere to be a leader. You just need to move forwards and make sure other leaders are doing the right thing. That's all.
As the last
Yeah,
question,
that's
maybe
true.
both of you can
Mm.
come in and speak about, since you have led teams, what does it mean to be a woman who's in charge? Because so many times when a man gets up and throws a tantrum or he gets angry with his team or demands a certain kind of target to be achieved, then it is seen as, oh, he is a great leader. But a woman, immediately the B word gets thrown around, or she's many Miranda Priestley comparisons come up. So, I'm just saying that you could both, since you are in that kind of a position, if you could speak about that a bit. And then maybe we'll come to the closing remarks.
I'll start with a true confession because I'm sure they must have said all that about me. 100% because I was quite fiery and feisty when I was younger. And I didn't suffer fools gladly. And very often, some male bosses had to step in and soothe the egos which I had hurt. I learned over the years to be a little more gentler and a bit of a mummy figure and get things done that way. But it took an effort on my part to do that. I have to confess. So I would say in the times that I sort of changed, I think, I hope, I became a sweeter, nicer person, but inside me I don't think I was. My goal was to get the job done, to get the best out of you, to get your job done. So I don't think I was very I wasn't the lion just roaring away and shaking my mane, but I did expect quality work. I was happy to coax it out of you, but I don't think I tried not to be a pushover, and I don't think I presented myself as a pushover. So I don't know whether that counts as a good boss or a bad boss, but I think I was a bit of a fiery one, is what I can say. But I did try. I didn't. I was quite equal in, try to be as fair as possible between the men and the women and so on. That's what. It's just incompetence irritated me. That's the best that I can tell you.
That's excellent,
So,
Ranjana. That's nice to hear that. I'll talk about leadership through the ages, really, because what worked 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, does not work now. It's not allowed anymore. So it's not about
yeah.
gender at all.
Mm.
I don't want to get into stereotypes of how women should be bosses like this and, men should behave like that. No, it's not about gender. What was all right to say, and I did start off like I did start off in the newsroom at the Indian Express Pune, and I have seen, paperweights being thrown, and I've seen all kinds
Yeah.
of drama, and in the
Awful
newsroom,
behavior.
it's not going to work today. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. It's not allowed anymore in 2025. And whether men should do it or women should do it is not okay. But yes, I'll go back to personality types. Some people are born with again, going back to my book, the eagle personality. Yeah, there is an eagle personality, which typically would be Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher, Kiran Bedi, those kind of personalities. That is their style. That's the way they are. And over time, even they've had to tone down. They really have had to tone down because that is the way the new situational leadership works. So that is the first part. Second, whether women, it's more difficult for women. The other insight into this really is maybe 2 or 3 generations ago when women first sort of barged into the workplace as leaders, and it was more tough. It was definitely more tough for them to say, okay, I have to now blend in and I have to now sit at this table with 10 other men who all look like each other, and I'm going to stand out. Whatever I do, I don't do, I'm going to stand out. Just the fact that I'm here is a problem, and I'm here. And they had to do a lot of things to break out and assert themselves, to be taken seriously, to be to simply exist, have that legitimacy that you have to now listen to me because I'm here. And over time, especially I would say the last 10, 15 years, and now we don't have to do it. There is no need to do it. And I too have been in rooms where I'm the only woman, as I said, in a board. I mean, I've even had these situations where in a group of 35, 40 leaders, I'm the only trainer. I'm the leadership trainer, and everyone else is around me. But I am the way I am. I'm wearing my sari, or I'm wearing whatever I'm wearing. I'm myself. There is really no need for me to try to be someone else. And I think that's the crux of leadership that we need to grasp, that you can be yourself, you can be gentle if you're gentle, if you're strong, you're strong. You, of course, as Ranjana rightly said, you have to expect the best out of your team. That's why you're there. That's the role of the leader, to expect the best out of your team and make it happen. If you ask me my own leadership style, for my own leadership style, yes, it's evolved over the years. Like everyone else, I was born what is called a dolphin personality. I was a nice person. Generally children like everyone to get on with each other. But as leaders, we don't have the luxury to say that everyone is sweet and nice, and then you're not a good leader, because if you're not
Yeah.
penalizing people for not doing their job and not rewarding people for doing a great job, you're not being a very good leader. So that gone. This is the lioness personality trying to balance things, in different forms and making it all happen. But in my case, I think over time that my leadership style has evolved to say that have you chosen to be a leader? If you haven't, because in our teams we get all kinds of people. We get laggards who are just chugging along, have chugged along for many years and want to chug along. It's fine, let them be. Or then you have people you have to micromanage, and that's the one thing I really don't like to do as a leader. I just step back and say I don't want to micromanage. If you want to work,
Mm.
fine. If you don't want to work, do as much as you can, and then you'll get what you will get. But like Ranjana rightly said, if there are people in my team who have chosen to be leaders, because leadership is a choice, right? Every time somebody says, I want to put myself out there and I want to grow and I want to be promoted, whether they're men or women or, trans, they want to be there. They want to do what they want to do. They have said it. And in my case, I have a whole very, very large team of leaders on wheelchairs. Or leaders who are blind, but they've chosen to be that. And once they've chosen to be that, there is no choice but to be harsh. When I say harsh, the expectations are sky high. And whenever I've gone back to people in my team saying, if I don't say this to you, because I happen to be a manager or leader, if I don't say this to you, one day you're going to sit in this glass cabin and people are going to laugh at you. And I don't want that. I don't want that because that is my role as your leader to make that happen. Sure.
Yeah. So I just would like to say to all the women out there and the boys and the men as well, don't get too caught up in the stereotypes that are thrown at you or the channels which you've been told are the ones for you to go along. Don't get too taken up by the slogans and the sort of little platitudes that will be thrown at you as well. Just, try to be yourself minus those sort of strictures as far as possible. And I think, as Manjiri has said, in this today's world, some things are not acceptable in behavior, which is absolutely right. There is no need for the kind of tyrannical, despotic tantrums that bosses used to throw in the old days. But so for everybody, I think the same thing works. That let us, you have to work together. You can do your solitary path as well, but don't get caught up in these sort of ancient societal norms that are going to hold you back as a boy, as a girl, as anything. So that would be my lesson, to try and think for yourself and think out of these little lanes.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Manjari?
what Ranjana has just described as lanes, I would describe that as caves, right? All of us come from little caves of community, of gender, of where we came from, what our ancestors did, what people in our past lives, in our organizations did. And the message is really for little girls to be able to do what they want to do. Let's not put them in little caves and saying what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Let them do what they want to do. And especially for little boys. And I have a very tiny example of somebody who has been my student. His name is Yugen Kulkarni. He's a young man from Kolhapur, and he was my student. Last 8 years out of the same Malhotra Wakefield Foundation program. And we've seen where he came from, Kolhapur, the community, all of that. And I think one of my happiest moments this year was on 14th of September when I met him and he came with his wife and he introduced his wife and he said, I said, what do you do? And I spoke to her and she said, I'm a PhD too. And he's a PhD and he's a professor now, he's teaching. And he said, she's my senior and I learned from her. And I think that was a win moment for me. And I hope that is going to be the future of where we are
Yeah.
headed. And he said it so proudly and so lovingly. And that is what we want. Let's get out of our caves and move forward.
Thank you, Ranjana and Manjari, for your insights and reflections. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on this podcast. Do write in and let us know what resonated with you. Until next time, goodbye.